Do I have your attention? Probably in this moment I do. Maybe in 3 more seconds I won't. No one to blame here. It's just that we are inundated with options when we are doing things all the time on our devices. Even when we walk down the street, there are so many signs, literal signs, that pull our attention away. And if you're an information junkie, you are constantly mining for that next thing that gets you deeper into an idea. None of these things are wrong, and I don't want to pathologize us and start saying, oh, I have ADHD or I have focus issues. All these things that we know are buzzwords to help us understand how the 21st century mind has spinned out a bit. I want to really bring us back in, and if you're still listening to this after 49 seconds, I'm doing a good job. I want to talk about how we can get our attention to just be a little more excellent. So that we could say, wow, I focused in on this one thing, and because of that experience, I feel richer, I feel more informed, I feel more satisfied, I feel more present, I feel more human. How do we do that? Well, one way is to start sharing with each other little tips and tricks that we do to stay focused. Some of those might include some technology hacks, but some of them might just be a mindset that we adopt. Some of them might be a philosophy that we really live into because we've become people that are so aware that our attention is compromised, that we are philosophically saying, okay, I'm going to stop this and I'm going to adopt a real great mindset. And I think these are all really good things. So to really drop into the mechanics of this, perhaps, I want to talk with Jay Vidyarthi, who, among many other things, identifies himself as an attention activist. And he might be able to help us in very specific ways to say, what are the things in life that are pulling our attention away? What can we do about it? And what is he doing about it as a UX and product person in the mindfulness space, which is very specific. So if you have thoughts about this, please let us know. Start talking. Start giving us that sense of where you are in your journey for better attention. And Jay, I'm really happy you're in this with us. So please help us out, first of all, with understanding where your dark shadow is. What's the other side of this? Where do you find yourself having real trouble with attention? Because I want to humanize you, because I want to see where you're struggling so that we can start there. Because people who are excellent at this stuff, they started from some place where they realized they weren't. So I'd love to hear from your perspective when you realized or what you're still struggling with when it comes to attention. And we'll go from there. Thanks so much. Looking forward to hearing everyone's voices.
Hi, Deborah. Thanks for having me on here. This is cool. It's my first time on the platform. Pretty cool. Yeah, I love your prompt there because that is true. I may, as you described, identify as an attention activist and spend a lot of time meditating and designing technology to help restore our attention instead of deplete it. But I was a teenager who played kind of the early advent of online network-connected video games until my eyes turned red. I have had periods of time where I spent way too much time on screens, TV, movies and stuff, video games. I've had times where I dove way too hard into work and I was just like frantically checking my email. And I think it's basically a result of all these experiences as well as the journey of learning mindfulness and of being a practicing UX designer. So understanding how the sausage is made in terms of this technology, that I kind of just, made the connections and had a bit of a light bulb moment around something trying to grab my attention right now. Had a bit of a light bulb moment around what it is that is happening in the world around us with all this technology. So one of the things that I kind of grokked and started to write about maybe in 2016 that I think kind of started the journey of this intersection was I realized that my passion and what I eventually concluded is probably a lot of us are in this boat, but my passion for mindfulness and my healing and the journey that resulted in finding practices that, although ancient, have recently been shown to have powerful effects on well-being, are fundamentally practices of attention. that fundamentally we are training our mind to pay attention in a certain way. And it wasn't lost upon me that more and more people are interested in these practices in a world that we quite literally describe as an attention economy, where every major organization, whether it's a brand or a political party or a social media influencer, is trying to get your attention and use it for various purposes. And so the sum total is that we are kind of living in a battleground of attention online and in person. And these practices empower us to reclaim this faculty of mind. If you think about, imagine you kind of own some property and there's some trees on that property and some large corporation comes and like cuts those trees down and takes them away. In a kind of physical metaphor like that, it's quite clear that there's an injustice, that something's been taken from you. It's harder to see in the mental sphere, but it's quite a similar situation that if you don't intentionally train your ability to pay attention and start to bring more choice into how you spend your time in the modern world, the powers that be will simply choreograph your attention. And I can tell you that as a designer, that people with my skill set train in the choreography of attention. And there's a reason why phones ding and little red numbers show up at the corner of your apps and emails are random and headlines are catchy and polarizing, because it commands our attention. So fundamentally, I am just as much of a victim of all this stuff, but I don't like the victim mentality, because I don't think we are powerless in this. I think, in fact, if you take a moment right now to just slow down and take a deep breath and you pay attention to that feeling as you breathe in and breathe out, even that is you playing the role of a steward of your conscious mind. And if we really truly believe that we need collective transformation in our society, and we believe that that transformation is a kind of a psychological, a mental, a spiritual, a conscious transformation, then I would ask you and everyone as the steward of your mind to help all of us by taking care of that mind and reclaiming it from the powers that be. Fundamentally, I still love technology, but I feel like it's been a bit poisoned, and I'm a bit on a quest to see if I can be an antidote. So open to helping anyone or answering any questions.
Jay, so nice to hear your voice. I woke up to listening to you, and the phrase of being a steward of my own mind is so provocative for me. And the deep breath in is so fundamental, and yet such a powerful invitation. So thank you for that. It's interesting, in a very meta way, I create these conversations on Swell to get the attention of people so that they enjoy the conversation and participate. And this is a great opportunity, right, to see if people come in and talk about this, because in the talking comes the evolution of language, and then the steward in your own mind becomes more empowered to remind you to breathe in, breathe out, and focus up. I think we're in a very new time, the last 25 years, because digital behavior is synonymous with attention sucking and multitasking. And I think about the time when I was doing more of one thing when I was younger. I realized that my music career would never have been as deep as it was, because if I had a phone in front of me when I was writing in my 20s. And I'm thinking, of course, it may have been a better career marketing-wise because I would have more outlets, but I wouldn't have woken up to the music in my head and written it down, because I would have woken up to my phone. And that's what I deal with all the time now as a creative. I'm like, what am I going to do with this pull? And I want to hear others talk about their struggle, because I think in talking about our struggle, we come up with maybe some more collective wisdom. and you mentioned some of your own struggles. And I wanted to ask you, as we wait for more voices to join, as you and I go back and forth, I wanted to ask you about the authenticity of people's true desire to be more attentive. And what I mean by that is, do you find that as much as people want to be single tasking and doing something really on a focused way and giving attention to it, that there's some pride in being a multitasker and being able to do 12 things at once and ping-ponging back and forth to accommodate for society? Are you finding that people are have this dual brain, that one wants it and one doesn't? What are your thoughts on that paradox?
Thanks, Deborah. Great questions. This is going to be fun. So, I appreciate you breaking the fourth wall and talking about how even with a platform like Swell and making these posts and, reaching out to me, we're trying to gather attention to this platform and this app. And I'm trying to gather attention to this message that I think is important. And it's fundamental to understand that there's nothing wrong with, that. Similarly, there's nothing really wrong with multitasking. There's nothing wrong with single tasking. And I try not to get into trying to tell people what to want and what to desire or anything like that. I don't think anyone can really do that. But I think what we can point to is that whatever it is that you want, whatever you want to do with your time, however you want to spend your time, there are forces that get in the way. So whether you want to be multitasking or single tasking is fine, but what you actually want and what you do can be very different things. Or another way to say this is your intention for who you want to be doesn't necessarily line up in your daily life, right? You can have an intention to be physically fit and eat well and exercise a lot. And as I think all human beings know, that is an ongoing challenge. And some weeks we're not there. And I think attention and technology is no different. But this is why the light bulb has gone off for me around the role of mindfulness. And if we think about the opposite, maybe we contrast mindfulness with mindlessness. And we say, okay, if you're multitasking, that's fine. Do you want to be multitasking? Is that how you want to spend your time? Are you aware of the influence that has on you? Are you aware of how you're going to feel at the end of the day? And with all that awareness, if that's your choice of how you want to spend the time, that's fine. And there's no problem with it. Similarly with single tasking. But I think what we're seeing, and I like that you sort of bookended this period of the past 25 years with technology, I think there's just another area where it's quite easy to get mindless. And I don't want to pretend this is new. And a metaphor that I like to use is one of diet, where, I'm writing a book on this, and one of the chapters is called Cupcakes Are Not Evil. And the idea is, cupcakes are delicious, and it can be very easy to eat 12 cupcakes in a sitting, and we have to use our willpower to not eat the cupcakes. But that doesn't mean cupcakes are evil. Sometimes a cupcake is delicious and it's beautiful and it tastes amazing. Sometimes you have a problem and maybe you shouldn't eat that cupcake. And sometimes, the stars align and the situation aligns that you're going to have 3 cupcakes and you're not going to feel guilty about it because that's just where you're at today, And it's not about the cupcake really. It's about who you want to be and how that's showing up in the moment. And I think, if you look at some of the neuroscientific frameworks around the way we work and some of the behavioral economists, I'm thinking about Daniel Kahneman, if anyone doesn't know, he sort of postulated this idea of system 1 and system 2, these 2 aspects of our minds. One is kind of the slow, take your time to think things through, and the other is impulsive, act in the moment, and how those things don't necessarily line up. So what I think attention activism is about, and this conversation we're having is about, is trying to say, there happens to be a lot of technology out there that just kind of hijacks our desires, insecurities, fears, and impulses. And it can very quickly lead many of us to not be living in the way we want to be living. And so I'm not trying to make any judgment on which way anyone should be living or which one shouldn't be living. But I think a lot of us resonate with the statement that technology plays a role often in kind of seducing us into living in a way we don't want to be living. We don't want to watch TV until 3 a.m. We don't want to spend our day on social media. We don't want to be looking at our phone instead of talking to our family or playing with our kids. And that's where the disconnect happens. Not that using social media or watching TV, anything wrong with any of that, but it's really about where our intentions don't match up with how we actually show up in the world. Hey, Adam, sure. So I would see attention activism as any attempt to reclaim attention or awareness, or, I think there's some synonyms there, but to reclaim our ability to pay attention from forces that intentionally try to distract us. And I think there's a couple of flavors of this. There's sort of reactive flavors of this, where it's like trying to manage our attention amidst the overload of information. And that would be like app blockers and, trying to not let ourselves be swayed by notifications and polarizing headlines and whatever it might be. And then I think there's a proactive flavor where it's closer to mindfulness, and it's, those skills, sometimes using technology to help, but working on those skills to be aware of where our attention is going in the moment, to draw insight from that, and to sort of regain some influence over the flow of our minds in daily life. And what this looks like in daily life is, there's lots of reactive things like removing certain apps from your phone, or preventing technology from going in your bedroom, or getting rid of your TV, or setting certain alarms, or getting an alarm clock so you don't wake up with your phone, or, deciding that you're going to turn off the TV at 9:00, or, canceling a social media account. These are sort of, I think, reactive. And then I think there's proactive attention activists that involve practicing mindfulness, or intentionally not bringing your phone out, or, being aware in the moment of what's going on around you, and working on those skills, and going on retreats, and trying to disconnect for a while, or use technology that's designed to help support you to pay attention. I think ultimately the forward-leaning stance of this comes from, I think, an implicit understanding or a felt sense that, again, as I mentioned before, that there's some deeper intention of how you want to live your life that's being disrupted. And there's a lot of awesome work out there looking at regulation and looking at ethics of corporations and tech companies. And I think there's stuff about the scientific investigation of the impact of these technologies. And attention activism, I see more. I mean, I think all of those things are related, but I really try to focus my efforts on what I see as a kind of missing link in a lot of the public discourse around this, which is what we can do as individuals in our daily life. And part of that is framing, taking a deep breath, and practicing mindfulness, not just as an age-old spiritual tradition, not just as a moment of self-care, but also as standing up for your right to do nothing in this moment. And that is your right. And sometimes it just feels like the modern world doesn't respect that right.
Okay, Ollie, so what are the rules around video games for you? What do you have to do before you play video games every time?
I have to pee.
You have to pee?
I have to have my timer, then I can play video games.
Okay, what was the middle one? You have to set your timer. Can you tell me about that? What do you do with your timer?
I set it to 60 minutes.
Yeah.
Then I pee.
Mm-hmm.
Then I play video games.
Okay, and then what happens when the timer goes off?
Then I'm all done video games.
Okay, and what do you do when you're all done video games?
Play potentially.
But what do you do with the video games? Like, how do you...
I
What do you do with
go into sleep mode and I turn the TV off.
That's right. Good job, buddy.